Ok, live. Andata.
Good morning. Good morning to all the participants of this last APRE dialogue of the week. We have been talking about very different topics this week, and we have to say that in every single session there was a mention to the COVID-19 pandemic, which is for sure tackling every aspect of our daily life. So we could not avoid having a session entirely dedicated to this COVID-19 and post-COVID, we hope, as soon as possible, to discuss more about the health research. So to give a space more to this very important and difficult dimension of the COVID-19 crisis. I want to welcome the two speakers of today, Ms. Irene Norstedt, connected from Brussels, Mr. Walter Ricciardi, connected from Rome. These two are, of course, not only two very knowledgeable persons on the field of R&I for COVID-19, but they are especially key actors involved actively in this COVID-19 response on different aspects for different spheres. And with them today, we want to enrich a bit the dialogue and the discussion, because what we want to do with this APRE dialogue is also engaging society, engaging citizens in this type of discussion, because like never before, for sure, this pandemic has been touching everybody, each of us. No one on the planet is really out of this scenario, and we all should do something to arrive to a solution, to the different solutions that this society is now needing to go on the resilience and on the recovery phase of this situation. So Ms. Norstedt, as I said, the European Commission, she's the director of the People Directorate from DG Research and Innovation. I want to mention that besides having had many other important roles, she was also an active executive director for the IMI, Innovative Medicine Initiative, which is for sure one of the partnerships which is also very relevant for the research and innovation scenario nowadays. Mr. Ricciardi is a professor of hygiene and public health at the Università Cattolica Sacro, Cuore di Roma. He is the advisor of our health minister, and of course is very active in public health response nowadays in Italy to the COVID-19 pandemic. So welcome again to both of you. What do we want to do in this 50-minute session with the two speakers? I think we should tackle for sure the R&I response, what the European Commission has been doing, what was the response they put in place in a narrative way. There was a coronavirus action plan. The European Commission has very quickly set some research and innovation priorities already in January. They have been organizing the funding, the calls, the fast-track evaluations for their project. And then they have thought of sharing data. They created a platform for COVID-19 data sharing. Lately, I think it's of a few days ago, the circulation of a manifesto that European Commission has invited all researchers to sign in favor of open science, circulation of information, of data. This is very important for them in this moment. Second point I would like to tackle with the two speakers is the values. So more discussing what are the values that they have been following in their respective situations, European Commission, Italy. The values are declining, some values are rising. So I would like to bring the discussion a bit on what has changed in terms of values and which values we want to adopt for the future, for the post-COVID situation. Third point, as we said in the title of this session, COVID and post-COVID lessons and challenges. So we want to tackle a bit of the lessons that we have been receiving in these months of activities and the challenges that we still need to face for the future. It's a very broad discussion. It's very complex. We don't want to find for sure solutions today, but we just want to put together with these two keynote speakers some important ideas of what was and what's next. So, and hopefully with some optimism in the selection of these ideas. Let's go to the core of this dialogue, and I would start with the speaker from European Commission, Ms. Irene Norstedt, to whom I'd like to ask to contribute to the setting of the research and innovation scene. So we will listen on how the European Commission has tackled this situation, with what research and innovation instrument, what output. So I would give the virtual floor now to Ms. Irene Norstedt. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Caterina. So can you hear me? Yes, I see thumbs up. Very good. So, very good. So good morning also to Walter. And good morning to all of you in the audience. It's a pleasure to be here today. And thank you also for the good introduction. You covered a lot of points that I was planning to raise as well as many of those. Has been very active in the response to the COVID outbreak. And as you know, the president of the Commission, President von der Leyen, has also taken a very active role in the global arena. That we are contributing with, because we know that with this new pandemic, a lot of the answers will need to come from science, because we are still in the middle of the second wave here in Europe, and we still have a lot of things to do, and science will provide the answer to many of the situations we have right now. So as Caterina also mentioned, we were acting very rapidly from the Commission side. First of all, we immediately in January launched our first expression of interest. And this is something we have learned from previous pandemics and infectious disease outbreaks, because before this we have had SARS, we have had Ebola, and the swine flu. And we had realized that we need to build in some flexibility in our research programs to make sure that we can act very rapidly. So we were actually, I think, the first research funder across the world to actually launch a call to address this new outbreak. We also started to work with the member states very rapidly, and together with the member states, we developed the ERA versus the Corona Action Plan, which was a 10-point action plan that also was agreed with the member states, and there was a joint statement by the EU leaders on the 26th of March in agreement on moving with this action plan. And I will come back to this one, but it includes a number of different issues, such as extending clinical trials, support innovative companies, sharing research data, hackathons, and of course to continue with our expressions of interest. I should also mention the International Pledging Conference that started that on the 4th of May 2020, and that aimed to raise funding generally, both for the research and development, both for vaccines, for therapies, and for diagnostics, and also to raise funding, for the manufacturing and also for the distribution, not only at the EU-wide scale, but really at the global scale, because this is, as you mentioned, this is a global pandemic that we have, and it will not help that we address one part of the world. We really need to make sure that we help the world in general to address this pandemic. So infectious diseases is something that we have invested in for a long time at EU level, and we have actually, through the 7th Framework Programme and Horizon 2020, we actually had invested more than 4 billion euros through our collaborative research programs, but also in the Innovative Medicines Initiative, the partnership we have with the pharmaceutical industry. And I would also like to mention the European and Developing Countries Clinical Trials Partnership, which is specifically dedicated to infectious diseases. We also have a network with research funders across the world called Europea, which is a network to facilitate the global research collaboration for infectious disease preparedness. And this partnership brings together some 23 research funding organizations across the world. So this has also been an important instrument to discuss and agree with other research funders what are the main priorities, so to say. So coming back to some of the things we have done, indeed, we have already mentioned the first expression of interest in January, and we actually launched a second expression of interest in May, because we also realized that there were additional research needs that urgently needed to be addressed. The Innovative Medicines Initiative also launched a full fast-track call for treatments and diagnostics. And also we have the European Innovation Council, and there the accelerator also dedicated or gave priority also to COVID actions. So there was really a lot of activity starting. I forgot to mention also the EDCTP, who also rapidly launched a call to further support the capacity of the African countries to deal with the outbreak. So it's been a very, very active period for us. In addition to launching all these new activities, we also realized that in our portfolio, we also have a lot of research ongoing that could contribute to address this portfolio. And here I'm not talking only about health research. We also have research in other areas in terms of how to develop and produce medical technologies, personal protection, manufacturing techniques, but also we should not forget mental health, behavioral aspects, so a very, very broad aspects. So what we also rapidly did was to look into where there were projects that could be redirected to better address this pandemic. And also to see where we could sort of start to harvest more results from projects that could be taken forward into actions. And actually, we saw that from FP7 and Horizon 2020, we had around 550 projects running that actually can contribute with results to this pandemic. And that could be scientific knowledge, but also solutions such as new disinfectant coatings for protective clothing, or safely transporting patients, or wastewater treatment, or digital applications. So, I mean, it's really, really broad here. I mentioned that we realized in the first expression of interest that we had, there were still a lot of gaps in terms of funding. So we decided to dedicate the second expression of interest to some very specific areas, one being the digital aspects. We know that there has been a lot of developments of apps and we need a lot of digital tools. Also on the behavioral, social and economic impacts of the outbreak, and also to look at the repurposing of manufacturing capabilities for vital medical supplies and equipment. In addition, we also had this call open to establish cohorts, not only in Europe, but also across the world, because this is, of course, another important aspect that we need to really make sure that we have big cohorts for the studying and better understanding of the disease and the predispositions of disease, etc., and also, of course, in the recovery. So this was another really important point. We have spent a lot of time and efforts in really bringing together clinical trial networks. So we already now have a pan-European adaptive network based on adaptive platform trials set up. And the one we have been working with the member states very closely on, also together with the European Medicines Agency and the European Centre for Disease Control, has been on repurposing of therapies, because we know that this would be the most rapid way to find adequate treatments. And we are currently also looking into setting up a pan-European network for vaccine trials, to further support trials of small and smaller developers who may not have the capacities of the big companies. We know that there are already many trials ongoing from the bigger developers, but we also know that there are many potential vaccines in pipeline from very small SMEs or academic developers. So we would like to further support that, and also set up this network also to support important public health trials, because we need to have science-based evidence also to support setting up very good vaccination strategies, and also to be able, of course, to pick up any potential adverse effects as quickly as possible. So that is another important aspect. It may also be so that the first wave of vaccines, we know that normally when you have a new vaccines, the first wave may not be as effective as the second wave. So there may be variations in terms of effectiveness in different age groups. It may be that you may need different combinations of vaccines to raise the effectiveness of this new wave, the first wave of vaccines. So these are questions that potentially also could be addressed to such networks. To finish off, I just would like to talk about also the data platform that has been set up. This is an open science platform under EOSC, the European Open Science Cloud. Latest I heard, it had more than 76,000 users. It's a very sort of broad, and it's a very active platform. So for those of you who are not familiar with that, please have a look at it. A lot of data collected and accessible for everybody for further research. And also, we have also on our DU website also information about any ongoing calls, etc., and more information about ongoing activities in the member states. So I think by that, I think I have covered most of the ground. I'm sure there were things I missed in my short introduction here, but it has been a very active and very hectic period for us here, but there is still work to be done, that's for sure. But we have done as much as we can, I would say, for time being under Horizon 2020. You know, we are currently working towards the new program, Horizon Europe, that will start in 2021. So that is also work that we are working on, and we are also waiting for decisions of the member states on the proposed Next Generation EU program, where it's also foreseen further investments for research and innovation, where health has also been an area that has been mentioned, also for the recovery from the current pandemic. So with this, I will stop here, and back to you, Caterina.
Thank you, Irene. Thank you for setting the scenario. As you said, many activities still running. I will go back to you also with some other questions on the research which is running at the moment. But for the moment, I want to go back to the other keynote speaker, Mr. Walter Ricciardi, which I forgot to mention also in the opening, that is also the president of the Mission Board for Cancer, as you mentioned, Horizon Europe and the next program. So I would ask also to Mr. Ricciardi to give his overview on the base of his experience on these last 10 months. So please, Walter, floor is yours. I see your mic is on. Okay.
Thank you, Caterina. You know, when in 2002, we tackled the first attempt of pandemic, I would say, which is the SARS, we were totally shocked by the fact that, of course, China was very slow and reluctant to share information. And the world was hit and was seriously warned about the risk of a pandemic via a respiratory virus and of course of the damage that could have been happening if the outbreak was not tackled and controlled, as it was the case of the SARS, because the SARS had the particular aspects of being able to be spread only by symptomatic patients. But of course, the European Union learned a lesson, so the ECDC was started and understood that to tackle a respiratory virus pandemic, first of all, you must be science-based. Without science, you don't tackle anything. You are simply disrupted, and of course, you can have serious consequences. So this is the first prerequisite. The second, that you have to be quick. So every day lost, particularly from a certain point, is a day in which you give and open the door to the spreading of the virus at exponential pace. And third, you must be international, because when you tackle a pandemic, I mean, there is no way that you can solve the problem unless even the last and most remote country in the world has solved the problem. And I must underline that the Commission did all of that in a very quick time, with a very rigorous approach, positively shocking all of us, because when they called for the international collaboration, we weren't even as scientists prepared to do that. So I think that they really did the best in the quickest possible time in the most rigorous level. So thank you very much for this to Irene and colleagues, because the European Union and the European Commission has been certainly, without any doubt, the most quick reaction and the most science-based and the most internationally oriented reaction. Of course, we have to balance this kind of reaction at the level of member states. As an advisor to the Minister of Health, I can't forget when we went to Brussels, we spoke with other ministers. I mean, and they hardly believed that this was a serious problem. And when we shut down the country, I remember that some of the prime ministers and ministers of health said, "You must be crazy. If you do that, we have to do that in our country. This will never happen. This is something that you are really doing in a very inappropriate way." And the result of the actions, the country that didn't do that or that reopen very too quickly and too early are in trouble, as most of Europe now is in trouble again. So what is the result of this action on research is incredibly important to shape our decisions. And again, now the challenge is to put these results in the hands of decision makers at different levels. First, of course, of politicians, because politicians must understand that the three prerequisites must be followed. If you are too slow, if you base your decision on opinion, on poll, on reactions, on concerns of lobbies, you are losing precious times. And if you focus your decisions at your national, even regional, even local level, you don't understand that we will win this pandemic again when even the last people in the most remote village in the world is going to be COVID-free for 40 consecutive days. So now we have another challenge, that we have to bring the result of this research into the hands of decision makers, the sooner the better, and provide them with the most appropriate tools for decision making, the sooner the better. Even our work inside the mission board was disrupted by COVID. We were on time in handing over our report to the Commission. We did that on September the 22nd. But undoubtedly, the mission of conquering cancer, which is one of the 5 missions of epochal challenges that any single member states cannot even hope to conquer, must be having the support of the European Commission in doing that. But certainly cancer, with one of the highest incidents in the world, in the European Union, has been disrupted. I mean, only in our country, 1.3 million of screening activities have been delayed, and not to tell about surgical interventions and therapeutics that have been delayed. So we have to reshape, you have to reset our mind, we have to understand that this is an epochal change, and we have to act accordingly. So the kind of research that the European Commission is funding, is pushing, covers the wide range of our actions, covers the fundamental research, cover the clinical research, cover the translational research, covers the implementation research, covers the dissemination research, and even cover one of the challenges that we had, which is disinformation and misinformation, because this is the first pandemic in times of social media with health literacy of our fellow citizens, unfortunately, in many parts of our union, some of the lowest in the planet. So we have to be able to translate this result of research into a language that people can understand. And one of the mission is exactly that. You may remember that the evaluation of the Horizon 2020 program by different stakeholders said, fantastic program, has been an incredible contribution to knowledge, to science, to collaboration, to transparency, to accountability. But if you go in the middle of a village in Ireland, in a town in Hungary, in a road in Stockholm, or in a small town in Italy, and you ask a citizen, what is Horizon 2020? They don't know. They don't know that the impact on their life can be really in the hands of researchers that make breakthrough innovation. And that's the scope and the activity that we must have in the next Horizon Europe program. Doing something that is sounds from the scientific point of view, doing something that is sounds from the political point of view, doing something that is sounds from the economical point of view, but also doing something that is meaningful for citizens in the middle of the road. Because the future, the present future, the close future is in the hands of science, is in the hands of timing, is in the hands of international collaboration. And I think that Italy has to play a role in this together with other member states, and I'm sure that it will. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ricciardi. Thank you. So your words of experience and evaluation also of what happened at the European level are very positive, and they are very also optimistic about our future. Now I would like also to go back with another question using the keyword you used, which is also collaboration and coordination, which you found still very effective in this very first phase of the COVID pandemic. So my question first to Ms. Norstedt, and then also if you want to comment, collaborations have increased at national level in between ministries, regions, and of course at the European level with member states. We have seen that European Commission has also created several boards. We have seen the high-level task force on R&I and coronavirus, different boards which have been called to advise European Commission in this emergency moment. So the question to Irene is these boards will continue during the course of Horizon Europe? Will they stay, and which kind of help you received during your activities? And the last question is, could European Commission, could European Union do more or reinforce this structure of coordination? What do you think?
Thank you very much, Caterina. Collaboration is the key. That is clear, and it has always been the key in research, I would say. And I should maybe say that actually the collaborative research program we have, I would say that we are actually also champions in the world in terms of fostering collaborative research. I don't think there are any other programs across the world who are having this philosophy. So already through our research funding, we bring together collaborations between scientists. But what we have seen increasingly over, I would say, the last framework programs is even stronger collaboration at different levels. So you mentioned here in the case of the COVID, it was really an unprecedented situation. So indeed there was this task force set up ad hoc with the member states. to develop and agree on this era versus Corona action plan and how to go forward with this implementation. So this is a philosophy we have worked on. We have now decided that that task force is kind of ceasing, and we have gone back to more the normal type of cooperation, which is through the program committee, which is, of course, where all the member states and the associated countries. We should also remember that the research programs have a number of countries which are associated to it, which means that they also pay into the program and they participate at the same level as the member states. So we will use the normal sort of program committee level where we bring together and we agree on the priorities, what should be done. And of course, you also have in the council, you have a specific research working party where you have all the member states collaborating as well in view of finding decisions. But in addition to that, you already heard me mentioning the GloPID-R, where we do this cooperation with research funders across the world to look at what are the priorities, etc. And then what I would also like to mention is that in particular the work that we are doing now on setting up the clinical trial network, that I think that there is a lot of structuring work that will need to be done. And these networks are really actually started to be developed in the area of antimicrobial resistance. Antimicrobial resistance is a really, really high priority, and I would say it's almost like the second priority to COVID, that is really, really worrying also at the global scale. And as you know, developing a new antimicrobial is not very easy, and there you rapidly need to find the patient wherever they would be in the healthcare system if you need to go into the test. So this type of structuring work actually had started already in the field, very much through the Innovative Medicines Initiative, but also through the Collaborative Research Initiative. And we have further built on that to bring together these networks, and in the case of the repurposing of therapies, but we also are working more on setting it up also, of course, for novel therapies, because such a network is used for everything. And as I mentioned, we are currently working on bringing it also together for vaccine trials. So this is part of this collaboration that we are saying, but more in terms of a structuring work. So one thing is to fund the actual research, but we should not forget the important aspect of the structuring and the infrastructure. Again, I would like to also come back to European Open Science Cloud, and I think that is really, really important in view of the sharing data and making data available for everybody, because that also makes such a sort of more progress in terms of the research to make the data available and also to not make the mistakes that anybody else has done. So a question we also have on the table is if we also should set up a more structured partnership, a pandemic or a preparedness partnership. It's something that has been proposed in the context of Horizon Europe. But however, we are still, I would say, in the very reactive mode in terms of COVID, and we still have a lot of lessons to learn. So this is a discussion that we will foster sort of in the coming months and years. And also you may be aware that the President has also announced the establishment of a European BARDA. I hope you are familiar with the US BARDA. BARDA has a very broad scope in terms of actions in terms of infectious diseases, but also nuclear medicine, etc. And here we have a set of other challenges that we need to collaborate on and think in Europe. And that is what has become apparent in this current pandemic is the shortage of medicines and the shortage of raw materials for producing medicines. So this is another area we need to start to look at. And we need to look at the whole scale of activities to make sure that we are working together, establishing networks where appropriate. We shouldn't establish networks where it doesn't work, but where it is appropriate to really foster agree on the common objectives and see how we best can work together to bring forward the necessary results that we are needed. I mean, now we are in the response mode to this pandemic, but we need to learn from this one for the future pandemic. And I think we have already learned so much. For example, what I mentioned to you about the shortage of certain medicines, that we really need to think about and see how we think together, how we can address that to make sure that we have a much more reactive and sustainable situation. Over.
Thank you, Irene. I also would like to pass then the floor to Walter Ricciardi if he wants to comment on the collaboration coordination topic.
Yeah, I think that you used the two key words for any successful endeavor in this very complex world and in this very complicated situation. But of course, to do that, these words do not remain words. As Irene said, we need management and leadership. You know, management and leadership means that task force, boards, panel have to be managed in a very appropriate way, selecting the best people to do that. And I would like to praise the European Commission. I've been serving in many boards around the world, and mostly in Europe and in USA. For instance, I was the first non-American to be chosen to serve in the board of directors of the National Board of Medical Examiners in more than 100 years. But I must say that even if, for instance, in the United States, you have very good scientists, fantastic and essentially no limits to resource. I love to serve more in Europe because in Europe, the scientists and the politicians and the managers are united by the common values, which is not the case in other parts of the world. I mean, for us, the values is universal coverage. It is in our DNA. Independently, if we live in a country such as Italy or Sweden, where we have a national health service, or in France and Germany, where we have a social insurance system, the value of justice is encrypted in our DNA. The value of equity is encrypted in our DNA. The value of solidarity is encrypted in our DNA. So when we work in Europe, and I served in the expert panel for investing in health of DG Santé, and I'm serving in the board of DG RTD, we go to the table to improve collaboration and coordination with this value-based approach. So we are not only concerned about the best possible science, we are concerned about the fact that the result of science have to serve people, have to serve citizens, have to be useful. That's why I'm very optimistic about the future, because only Europe can do that. But of course, we have to do that in a very scientific way with transparency and accountability, which is what we are doing. And again, with collaboration and coordination, we will win this pandemic. But again, we must be sincere with our people. We cannot elude them that, you know, the vaccine is coming next week. You know, the situation is going to be solved. Stay home. No, it's not like that. It's working if you are explicit, if you tell the truth, and of course, if you have honest and committed people to serve. And I think that collaboration and coordination in Europe have this kind of denominators. Over.
Caterina, can I come with some
sure.
thoughts? Yes, following Walter's. So you know that when we are working on Horizon Europe, we are also looking at a new way of working in terms of impact, etc. And the health cluster for Horizon Europe, we are co-sharing between DG RTD and DG Santé. And what we have seen, and the reason for that is, of course, very obvious, because we would like to make sure that research results are really taken up as quickly as possible to be deployed in health systems or to be developed into products or be directly deployed in hospitals, etc. So what we have started to do as well, because we have, by tradition, we are working with sort of the research ministries in the member states from the research side, whereas our colleagues in DG Santé are used to work with the health ministries. what we have started to do is also actually to organize joint meetings between those two groupings. And what has been very interesting to see is that in those meetings from many countries, these colleagues have never met each other. And that is really, really something that we need to foster a lot more as well. We have to stop thinking in terms of, pillars. This is research, this is healthcare, this is something else. We really need to bring together in what I would call the pipelines in terms of starting from the basic research. How can we translate it, and how can we make sure that all those research results that we are generating, and there I would say Europe is fantastic in delivering research and scientific results, but we need to make sure that we can package those in ways that are easily understood and being taken forward to the appropriate end users. And there is a collaboration that we need to reinforce a lot more. We have started from our side, but there is a lot more that can be done. And as we have seen in the meetings I mentioned there, in particular to make sure that different ministries are starting to work much closer together. I think that's really, really important. And here I would like to mention, because I think we have one area where I think we have come really far in terms of collaboration, and that is in the area of rare diseases, where we do have a cooperation. We have established in Europe, we have the European Joint Program, which includes all the member states except one, Cyprus, and set up a real, I would say, integrated system in terms of research, collecting the data, using the European reference networks to make sure that the latest research results can be brought through the patients, and then also the feedback loop in terms of what more research would be done. And that particular cooperation also feeds into the international work we do in IRDIC, the International Rare Diseases Research Consortium, which includes members from all of the globe, and not only from research funders, but also from patients, organizations, industry, and also various foundations are part of that one. So it's a quite interesting model that I very much would like to see repeated in other areas as well, to make sure that we have this collaboration both in terms of from the science into the use all the way down to the patient, and with the feedback loop. So that is one dimension, but the other dimension is also bringing together different countries as well. Over.
Thank you. A lot of input from both sides, of course. I heard many interesting things, the future possible partnership on response to pandemics, the values by Mr. Ricciardi, solidarity, transparency with society and citizens. Many input and many lessons learned already, which make me doubt now about how to go further in our dialogue. I had many points in mind. Now, when Mr. Ricciardi mentioned the pipeline, or it was you, Irene, so bringing the results of research and innovation to the field, you made me thought about healthcare transformation, which is one of the other field very strategic under pressure. And I would like to ask also Mr. Ricciardi in this moment, as he is the expert of public health, where he thinks we are now in this healthcare transformation, what he thinks about the steps to be taken. To you.
I think what the pandemic has clearly showed, but we must say that we already discovered that in the To Reach project. You know, the To Reach is a concerted support action about the role of health systems. In many cases, we have had fantastic technology, fantastic science, but this science and this technology weren't translated into practical provision of services to citizens. And in a series of countries, we already had incredible good, even best practices to do that. And the knowledge was there, the technology was there. But unfortunately, many countries wasted resources, timing, in doing something that they could have avoided, to make some mistakes, to share information, to share data with other countries. Of course, this is not easy to do because each member state has its own, culture, history, geography, economy. But what we have learned in the past 4 years, that with the support of the European Commission, we are able to provide member states with the most appropriate tools to support independent decision-making at national level, but using the best available resources, using the best available data. And I think that this is going to be of paramount importance in the future. So sharing information will guide our political decision-making to do the best for their citizens. And the first is, of course, the digital transformation. I mean, in Europe, we are building a kind of new highway, a kind of new railway. If member states do not understand that the change is epochal and we have to do that using the best of our information, data, and technology, of course, they will not go forward. Where will they go back, even staying in their position that they are currently now? We don't want that. We want that any single citizens in the European Union take advantage of this. And I think that healthcare transformation must be supported, at least inspired by the action that a partnership can play at European level. I'm sure about that. And again, Europe can really lead the world in this. And I'm sure that it will.
Thank you, Mr. Ricciardi. Irene, yes, please.
Yeah, so that leads me to think about, one of the top priority for the current Commission is indeed establishing the European health data space. And that is really something really important. And I know that my colleagues in DG Connect have spent more than 20 years trying to bring forward the need for common format for electronic health records or for health records in general. It's been a long road to get there, but we have finally an agreement on at least the minimum basis of what should be in there. But I think it's a really, really important priority for us in Europe, because that is something that really will bring together, because the health is the area which is, I will say, the one which is the last one to really be thoroughly digitized. And that is really holding back this transformation of the health systems. So that will really be a top priority in the coming year or coming years, to see how we can build this up in the best possible way. Also be mindful of respecting data protection and also, of course, the cybersecurity, because we know that health data is also among the most, shall we say, worrying data if that is being spread as well. So that's another point to be reflected on. But it's really a top priority for this current Commission to go forward with the European health data space.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Norstedt. We are going towards the end of our dialogue. We still have a few minutes though. I would like to tackle a topic which is, of course, very important for citizens. We talked about different types of research, and I want to mention vaccines. So European scientists, international scientists are doing a lot of work on this, and what citizens want to know is when we will have a vaccine. That's the most important information we want to receive. I wanted to ask you, as we have seen that European Commission is signing agreement with different companies in the last weeks. We read about these signatures, this agreement, but we don't actually know as citizens what it means for us. So if you want, just briefly tell us what is this procedure, what does it mean in terms of vaccine production and distribution. And of course, another point on vaccine, I would like to ask both of you, this faster process is surprising. We are used to very long years of clinical trials, and now we see that actually we could have a vaccine in 1 year or more. So how is it possible? And do you think this is transferable to other vaccine research in the future? So is this a lesson learned somehow? Thank you.
Okay, so we are really at an unprecedented situation here because we know that the world is basically on hold while we have the current pandemic. So therefore, many of the industries has gone in and they are throwing all their resources into developing a vaccine. And that, of course, is speeding up the work. But they also do that at the risk because it means that a lot of other developments actually have been put on hold because there is so much resources going into the vaccine development. I don't know the latest figure, but we are somewhere around 200 vaccines in development right now. I think everybody has read in the papers or almost daily, news about these different vaccines and which ones are sort of the front runners, etc., in terms of reaching the market. What should be a very important point here is that at no point will the safety of the citizens be compromised, even if these developments are being done at a very unprecedented speed and scale. At no point will there be any compromise in terms of looking at the efficacy, effectiveness, and the safety of these vaccines before they are brought out. So when we will have a vaccine, it's difficult to say. We hope that it will be in the first half of 2021. But of course, this is something where, the science and the results will need to be demonstrate exactly the safety and effectiveness. And there we have our regulatory agencies that will do their job and to really review the data that is being produced. So the advanced purchase agreements are also concluded with those vaccines where it's felt that they are the most advanced vaccines. They are done with companies that are developing vaccines using different technologies to develop vaccines. There are different ways of developing a vaccine. And they are built up constructed in different ways. So what these advanced purchase agreements are doing is that they are also providing some reassurance for these companies who are put other things on the side, which of course is a big financial issue for them. And of course for us, it's also a big issue that we need to get the vaccines as quickly as possible. So it's a win-win situation to do these advanced purchase agreements to make sure that we would get access to the vaccines when they come, and also that there would be a fair distribution of these vaccines. So it's really again a collaboration and a collective work to make sure that it's not only the richest who will get the vaccines first, but actually that we also have a fair distribution in the EU, but also there's cooperation going on under what's called ACT, which is a worker collaboration that was established with the WHO and with many countries in terms of, also looking at the worldwide distribution. And there's something called COVAX, where a lot of countries has signed up to make sure also that we ensure vaccine distributions really at the global scale once the vaccines will be available. So, but it's really a way of assuring that we will have access to the first vaccines at a fair and reasonable cost as well. So that is another component in this. And it's really a way of making sure that we have a sort of a general access for all those people. And then there are also vaccination strategies, being developed in terms of there will, of course, not be available vaccines for the whole population in one go. So therefore, you will need to have sort of different categories of how you go out in healthcare workers, the most vulnerable populations, etc., that needs to be vaccinated first, etc. So, but I'm sure Walter will complement my comments here.
Yes, indeed, this is unprecedented times, and the collaboration between public and private at international level is very important. I think we open the doors to a new approach, because you may know that Italy, France, Germany, and the Netherlands were the governments that paved the way then for the European Commission to sign the contracts with these front-runners vaccines, and this was really difficult to do, because there were a lot of ingredients in the contracts to be solved, liability, funding, distribution, intellectual property. But we have done that, and now we are managing, of course, in uncharted territory. So I think, again, the very important role of the European Commission is granting safety and quality, and saying words of truth, as Professor Rasi, the Director General of EMA, did. I mean, that there are politicians that say that we are going to be inundated by vaccines next week. This is not going to be the case, and that's something that we have to be aware, and we have to speak the truth to every stakeholders, including population, because the COVID fatigue would be even more disappointing if do not tell the truth. So I think this is important, particularly in the field of vaccines.
Thank you to both for these very clear explanations on a very sensitive topic for us citizens, vaccines and vaccination strategies. I would like to really give you a last chance of delivering some final remarks about this discussion, if you wish. We liked very much the symbolic words you used for the social cards used in this event. Thinking about the future, Ms. Norstedt mentioned the word people, so population at the center, and Walter said also something very positive. The future is in our hands. So before closing this APRE dialogue, I just leave you a free floor to deliver a final message on these lessons learned and challenges for the future. And I thank you warmly for dedicating 1 hour to our audience today. First to Irene.
So thank you, Caterina. So I think what sort of these broad discussions we have had also shows, I mean, for me, the keywords are really the collaboration, the cooperation. This is how we should move forward, because the value is so high. And why are we doing all this? We are doing all this for the people. I think this is really important also, that we need to really connect with the citizens and ask, what does the citizen want? What are the solutions that they are looking for? We come very much from a, so we say, science and technology push side, but I think that we also need to very much turn around and see what are the solutions and what are the innovations that the people are looking for. And I think that should also help us to guide us in the future of where we will go in the area of health research and innovation.
Thank you. Walter.
I think that one word is Europe, Europe, Europe. That's the only word that we can shape our future. The future is in our hands, but no single member state is going to be able, with the emergency, with the economic, the financial, the social. We will have social emergencies, I'm sure, because of course, in many countries, people are really in trouble. So I think the only way is Europe to support us, and we support Europe to do the best for our people.
I couldn't expect any best closure of this APRE dialogue series. I'm really lucky to have had you as keynote speakers for today, and I wish you sincerely a lot of success in the work you are managing and in the decisions you will take in the near future for the respective spheres. Thank you very much. So again, thank you, and I hope to see you soon in person in Brussels and Rome. Thank you,
bye.
Irene.
Thank you,
Thank you,
bye.
Walter.
Thank you.
Bye, bye.
Thank you.